Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So it's my intention to speak on the topic of wisdom tonight. Wisdom as it relates to the 10 virtues that support letting go. And wisdom is an important topic because it's really the culmination of the path, or at least one of the culminations of the path. I think there are different signatures of the path ripening, and one of them is wisdom. Another of them is loving kindness. Another of them is peace or stillness, or another is compassion. And so wisdom as a signature of the path of awakening shows up as a result of seeing things clearly. And in the tradition that I have spent many years, one of the things that I really love about it is that there are many clear instructions and very clear stepping stones of how to cultivate that path and what that path looks like. And so the instructions support us to begin to start orienting our focus of attention on the way things are in the world, as opposed to, would you like to move closer so you can hear? Do you want to just move your chair over here? Yeah. You're welcome to bring the chair over there. Yeah? Okay. Look at me through the tree. So ordinarily, when we look at the world, we tend to want to see things in terms of their characteristics of being stable and bringing about satisfaction and being solid. And when we look more carefully, we can see that our tendency to look in this way and see things in this way is in a discordance with the way things actually are. And so when we take a careful lens and look at what our experience is, we can see that there isn't anything inherently satisfactory in anything, you know, and that things are constantly changing, that even the stuff that we love, that we really treasure, it's shifting and it's changing. And it's because of that we can't rely onto it and hold on to it and find something inherent in it that is going to be giving us lasting happiness. And so these characteristics of change, of non-substantiality nature of things not being inherently satisfactory, really shift our perspective from the way we tend to see things. And that way of seeing is the result of seeing clearly. And so, you know, I love these flowers. These flowers were given at the end of a teaching class, and they were just magnificent, absolutely spectacular. And just watching them slowly fade over these weeks, you know. So it's not as if my heart has turned against them. There isn't a rejection, but there's just this sense of seeing that the beauty and the joy that comes from looking at those beautiful flowers is not something that can last over time. It's a momentary experience to feel that joy and the generosity that it was given with, but that it is going to fade in time, you know? It's just going to fade in time. And so the stuff of our world, the things that we can know and name and touch and put our hands on, it's all like that. It comes, it is there for a while, and it shifts, you know, it releases. So this path of clear seeing that helps us come to the recognition that things are not inherently satisfactory, that they change, that there isn't anything substantial that is lasting, comes from the Eightfold Noble Path. And that Eightfold Noble Path has these different components to it which all support seeing clearly. And so in the Eightfold Noble Path, it starts with right view. And one of the characteristics of right view is both the right way of looking at the world and the right way of viewing things in a way that helps us see beyond the world. And so the right way of looking at the world is to understand that there's a cause and effect relationship by the way things come into being. That it isn't just random, that stuff is the way that it is. And so when we're looking at that, then it really helps put into perspective some of the complexity of what we're navigating in a way that makes it easier to make choices and take responsibility. And so, like for myself, I'm, in a process of review, looking at many of the things that I've been through over the last many years and some of the patterns that have given rise to it. And a lot of my review is very much looking at my own choices, the patterns of my own way of looking and seeing things and the result that comes from that. So in that way, it isn't about blame, it's about responsibility. And when we are able to take responsibility, then it gives us a position to make different choices in the future. And that has a potential for having a different result in the future. But when we look at this from a perspective of how can we see things in a way that helps us see beyond just the ordinariness of our world, then the classical teachings is on the Four Noble Truths. And to see that in all of our life, in all of our experience, to see that as an arising in the present moment. And so the Four Noble Truths in simplicity are the truths that there is unsatisfactoriness, the truth that there is a cause, that when we are focused on the cause and release our grasping, then there is a relaxation of suffering, and that there's a path that leads to the ending of suffering. And again, the path is the Eightfold Noble Path. So there's loops of the teachings embedded in the teachings. The first of the Noble Eightfold Path is right view, and within it contains the Eightfold Noble Path. So it's a little bit like a holographic, you see things within each other. So the Eightfold Noble Path, when it's practiced fully, it gives a way of releasing the things in our mind that bind us. And the things in the mind that bind us is the belief, the notion that there is a solid and separate existing human being that is separate from the causes and the conditions that give rise to it. And one of the ways that expresses itself is by thinking of ourselves as being solid, that there's something fundamental about us that doesn't shift, that doesn't change. Another way that the fetters start to release when we are experiencing profound insight is by the recognition that there aren't rights that we can do that in and of themselves are going to create the circumstances where our mind is going to shift. That there needs to be an application of effort, and there needs to be the release into insight. The mind is occluded with ignorance, and one of the shapes of ignorance is through desire. Another shape of ignorance is through aversion, of not wanting. So our obsessive desires and our intense ill will of resisting, of not wanting, of intending to harm, is one of the ways in which ignorance expresses itself. So when the Eightfold Noble Path comes to fruition and the insights allow the mind to see clearly into the nature of the way things are, then these start to lighten and then eventually release. So the picture on one of the pictures on the bookshelf is of Dipa Ma. And Dipa Ma had practiced to the level where she had released all obsessive desire and ill will. And being in her presence was a remarkable experience, because the quality of love in her was enormous. And there was just this tremendous sense of stillness and peace. And so the manifestation or the characteristic, the signature of her mind waking up was of this profound loving kindness that was just like as vast as an ocean. It was just, I had never experienced anything like it before. It was unimaginable. It was like so vast. And that loving kindness was not a kind of smarmy marshmallow goo that sticks onto the surface. It was like this penetrating love that sees clearly, embraces fully. There's no confusion. But the overriding result was this deep, loving embrace. So when ill will releases, when obsessive desire releases, we're not left with a sense of vacuousness, a sense of, this deep, dark cavern of nothingness. There's this bright fullness, this luminosity, this peacefulness that comes when we let go. And it's to be in the presence of people who have realized this is quite extraordinary. So the fetters that let go are the fetters of doubt that there is the possibility of waking up to the end of suffering, of the release of ill will and desire, of the letting go of restlessness, and the way in which our mind concocts a self that posits I am as somehow something separate, superior, inferior, or equal to somebody else. All of those manifestations release. So the gradual path takes us through the Eightfold Noble Path, which supports us with clearly seeing, and that clearly seeing with the support of our intention, our actions, our effort, our speech, our livelihood, our ability to focus our mind on what is happening in our body, in our heart, in our mind, and on Dhammas, and our ability to is the culmination of all of that is the heart opening up and seeing clearly. So the gradual path has clear steps and clear delineations of things that we can practice and clear ingredients that support step-by-step increments to move from a heart and a mind that is bound up to one that is more open and free and peaceful and spacious and clear and loving and at ease. And this gradual path isn't abrupt, and we can begin at any place where we are, and we can take the next step. It's an invitation, it's an open invitation, and everyone is welcome. There is no one that's excluded. But in addition to this gradual path, which has a clear and progressive path of instructions and cultivation and development. Alongside that is a path that is something that we can drop into at any moment. It's imminent. It's right here. It's right now. It always has been. It always will be. There's nothing that we need to do in order to get there. There's no place we need to attain. There's nothing we need to attain. It's always present. And so alongside the gradual path is an imminent path. It's a pervasive path. It's a timeless path. It's an ever-present path. And anyone at any point, at any stage, can touch into that and know that directly. Experience that directly. And for myself, one of the ways that supports me to do that is when I shift my focus from the things in my experience in the room to the space that the things are experienced in. And so just here in this room, we're listening to the fan, and there's the Bodhi tree that I'm looking through you towards. And then there's the board, and there's the bookshelf, and there's me sitting here, and there's the light, and I'm talking. There's my bodies, and our bodies are sitting, and some on chairs and some on cushions. There's sound. And all of that are things. They're objects. They arise. They're all dependent on conditions. They all change. Right now, I'm talking, and then I stop talking. We turned on the fan earlier. We'll turn it off later. We'll turn up the lights when it gets darker. I'll put the cushions away after we finish. The sensations in our body, the thoughts, the feelings that we have, they all change. But all of this arises in space. And when we begin to see the space of the room as a metaphor for the awareness of our mind that knows and receives, then we are leaning in to that quality of mind which is always present. It's always been there. It always will be there. It's not dependent on light or sound or absence of sound or wearing certain robes or having hairstyles a particular way. Our access to it can be variable, but just like the space in the room, there's lots of times when we're not paying attention to it, but it doesn't make it go away. The space doesn't disappear when we are focused on something else. Now, we don't have to go away and live in a cave for 20 years to recognize the space that might support our ability to access that. But it doesn't support the space in the room always being there. So in addition to the gradual path is an imminent path. And at any point of our day, of our life, of our experience, we can drop into that. We can be completely overwhelmed and totally contracted and feel like we've got too much on our plate and anxious or frightened. And then in a moment, just shift into the knowing of it, to knowing overwhelm, to knowing anxiety, to knowing fear. Knowing it in awareness, feeling it in our bodies, and holding that knowing in awareness. And in that moment, there is clear seeing. Clear seeing doesn't mean that what we are seeing is balanced or pleasant or what we like or what we identify ourselves to be. There's just the clear seeing of things as it is. It's like this. But when there's the clear seeing, there's a moment of seeing without the intensity of identification of this is who I am. This is what I am. And in that moment of clear seeing, there's peace. There can be ease, contentment. There can be love. Even if what we are clearly seeing isn't peaceful and isn't loving. So wisdom as a virtue to support our letting go supports us to let go of hoping that things are going to be different than the way they are. In a gradual path, it gives us tools and perspectives to cultivate so that step by step we can move towards greater skill and balance both in the world as well as in our access to what is timeless and pervasive and ever present. It helps us let go of the basic confusion that the stuff in our world is stable, that it doesn't change, that ultimately there is going to be anything that we can hold on to that's going to be the thing that's going to do it for us. And when we learn to let go and have more access to the quality of mind which is still and pervasive and timeless and ever present, then we can see or sense that that's where happiness comes from more readily. That's where something that is more reliable can be found. So let's pause here